Awesome. So thank you for being here. Welcome everybody, and happy Affordable Housing Week. I love saying that. Thank you so much for joining us in our coffee chat with April Black, the Executive Director of THA. My name is Amanda DeShazo. I'm the Executive Director of the Tacoma-Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium. The Affordable Housing Consortium, for those who aren't familiar with us, we are a membership-based nonprofit. We provide education and advocacy to promote the development and preservation of affordable housing across Pierce County. We're made up of about 60 members. Most of them are the major nonprofit housing developers within Pierce County. But we also have funders, government agencies, architects, construction companies, lots of folks, and individual advocates. I see a lot of you are actually on the call today too, which is fantastic. And thank you for being here. So the consortium is really happy to be hosting Affordable Housing Week, and we welcome you to join our events through the rest of the week. And those are also listed on our website, which is www.tpcahc.org. We've got a variety of events in store for you for this week, including more virtual panels, a walking tour of affordable housing, which is co-hosted by myself and THA. We've got a movie premiere at the Grand Cinema, and then a networking reception on Thursday at Edison Square. Lastly, on Friday, we've got a conversation about community land trust, which will be followed by a legislative forum where we have state, county, and city representatives that will be there. So that is in person. It's going to be at the Greater Tacoma Temple Christ. I always get the name mixed up, but it's in Tacoma and it's on our website. So I hope that you guys will make it.
It's called the Greater Christ Temple Church.
Thank you so much, Casey. I always get that tongue-tied. And then before we get started, I wanted to thank our title sponsor, which is U.S. Bank. Their support has made this week possible. And so briefly, I'll go over the layout of our discussion today. So I've got questions for April about THA and her work there. And then we'll leave about 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A from you guys in the audience. And you can put those in through chat, or we'll do a raise your hand feature. And then again, the session is being recorded and will be available for you to review probably within the next week, I would say. So with that, I'm going to introduce April really quickly. And then April, I'll provide just a quick overview of THA, and you can help me if I leave out anything important. So today, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing April Black, the Executive Director of the Tacoma Housing Authority. April's journey with THA began in 2009, and her ascent through the ranks is nothing short of inspiring. In 2021, she made history by becoming the first woman to lead THA since its inception in 1940, which is just of that. April wasted no time in making her mark on the public housing sector. Her visionary leadership and dedication to improving the lives of THA clients and staff have resonated throughout the Pacific Northwest. April's path to leadership in public housing is rooted in her own experiences. Hailing from humble beginnings in rural Montana, she understands the economic struggles faced by extremely low-income households. This deep empathy and determination to combat poverty fueled her decision to pursue a career in public housing over 2 decades ago. So while earning her Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and Communication Studies at the University of Montana, April began her journey in the housing sector. From there, she embarked on a career serving at housing authorities in Missoula and Bremerton, and ultimately found her home at THA. Along the way, April's earned a reputation as an innovative thought leader, unafraid to challenge the status quo and push boundaries to create positive change. I would also like to mention that April serves as the Vice President of the Affordable Housing Consortium, which I'm extremely grateful for. So everybody, please join me in welcoming April Black, a true champion for affordable housing and social justice. Thank you, April, for being here today.
Oh, thanks, Amanda. That was quite an introduction.
I mean, you're an inspiration. What can I say?
Thank
So
you.
let me just give everybody a quick overview of THA, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the questions, okay?
Sure.
So we all understand who THA is and the great work that you guys are doing. So established in 1940 by the Tacoma City Council, THA was created to address the shortage of safe and affordable housing for low-income individuals in the city. Initially focused on federal housing programs, THA has since expanded to offer a variety of housing assistance initiatives. So THA's main role is to provide rental housing, both through its own units and partnerships with private landlords. Programs like the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which folks know as Section 8, helps thousands of households afford housing in the private market. Today, this program serves over 3,500 households in Tacoma. In addition to rental assistance, THA offers programs to help individuals purchase their first home. And overall, THA serves over 12,000 individuals in Tacoma with a focus on minor children, seniors, and persons with disabilities. THA also provides supportive services to promote independence among their tenants. So in short, they play a vital role in addressing housing needs and fostering community well-being in Tacoma. So I look forward to talking more about their initiatives and learning more about THA and what you guys are up to. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we will get to our questions. So, sorry, 1 second. There we go. Perfect. Hi. All right, April, are you ready? Perfect. And hopefully everybody has their cup of coffee. It was a coffee chat, but I'm already on my LaCroix. Okay, awesome. Yes, perfect. So April, why don't you tell us about your background and the journey that led you to your current role as Executive Director at Tacoma Housing Authority?
I'm really not sure what more I can add from the background that you provided, Amanda. Maybe we can skip that question and move on to other ones.
Sure. Didn't have anything to add to that?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, then let's go to our next question. What are some key initiatives? Oh, wait, right? Yeah. What are some key initiatives or projects that Tacoma Housing Authority is currently working on?
Yeah. So there are a few. I would say THA is always working on a lot, but I'm going to highlight 3 things. So the first is completing our Housing Hilltop project. That's in the Hilltop neighborhood of Tacoma. It's going to be 231 new 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. And we get to start leasing those in June. We're doing pre-leasing right now. This is a pretty unique project for THA in the way that there's a community priority for leasing the project. So we are trying to prioritize people who are at risk of being displaced from the Hilltop and people who have been displaced from the Hilltop as we lease this project. So making sure that there are continue to be housing opportunities for people who originated in the Hilltop in this building or in these 2 buildings. This is also the first time that we have built and leased brand new commercial space. And as folks who are housers, this is definitely new and uncharted territory. But my colleague, Nicholas Carr, who's on the call, is leading that effort on THA's behalf and really excited about how he's approaching that. The other project that is underway is Aviva Crossing at James Center North. So this is about a 7-acre property that currently is a strip mall with multiple buildings on it. We purchased it several years ago with the intent that THA would be developing the affordable housing and then working with some partners on commercial space and market rate housing. But we've pivoted a bit where we are now working with partners who develop affordable housing, and Mercy Housing Northwest is a partner for affordable housing. They'll be developing housing with tax credits, and then we'll be providing voucher subsidies so that households down to 0 income can rent there. Co's development will also be developing apartment units there and renting those below market to households at about 70 to 90% of area median income. And then we have another property parcel on that site that's been out for bid, and we're hoping to select the developer for that site soon. This project has been pretty unique for THA because it's the first time that we've redeveloped a site that has commercial housing. And what we found is that it's pretty complicated because there's infrastructure there, but that infrastructure is not adequate for housing. So just for example, the infrastructure is there for 40 toilets, and there are going to be more than 400 toilets there. So you have to redo the water, the electric, the wastewater lines, and also have a way to manage the stormwater to make sure that we're protecting the Puget Sound. So this has been really an exercise in learning how to convert property. You think that it's going to be easy because all that stuff is already there, but you need to make sure that it is adequate to serve what will be there in the future. What's also unique about this property is that we're partnering with Metro Parks to put a community park on site. So adding green space for the entire neighborhood, not just for the people who will live there. And they are partnering with Tacoma Public Utilities to help find creative ways to manage the stormwater on site to water all of the green space. So that's pretty cool.
That is really cool. Can I say something really quickly, just because it like so perfectly aligns with Affordable Housing Week? Is that you've already mentioned so many different partners involved in this project, from like folks who are doing market rate to Metro Parks to TPU. Like that's really exciting. So thank you for just convening all of them for something that's just so important, right? Affordable housing. So
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
it's not us convening them. It's that this is really affordable housing as a group effort. And it's exciting that people who are outside of affordable housing see themselves as part of the solution. So we're really excited that those partners are at the table and are thinking about how they can be at the table without even having to be reminded of it.
Love that. Thank you.
The other unique thing or initiative that we're taking on doesn't sound as sexy, but it is. And that's that we're converting our software system. So our staff have been really preoccupied with this, converting to a new software system. And the reason that we're doing it is to make our staff work easier so that they can spend more time focusing on our customers. But it will also have portals in it where applicants can apply for housing, they can check their status, they can update things like their contact information. There will also be a portal for our current customers to submit their changes, to update information, to ask questions of THA staff. And there will be a portal for the property owners that we pay for through the voucher program. So we hope it's just an easier way for people to get answers to their questions, navigate through our systems themselves without having to reach out directly. And we feel like it's also just really a step towards a more modern model of communication and serving our customers.
So you guys have to take direct calls every time somebody has like a question about something?
There's a lot of people calling in. Yes.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Yeah. That sounds fascinating though. I'm glad. I know I've talked with Alexis who, works with the private landlords, and she's always like, we're going through our update of the software and it'll be fantastic once it's done, but that's always a headache, right? When you're going through it. So
yeah.
Cool. I'm glad that the tenants are going to have an easier way to communicate with y'all, and it'll be easier for you to get access to them quicker. So, okay. Anything else for our question there? No. Okay. Let's move on to our next one. So this is a question that I often get, and it's not exactly clear to me. So hopefully you can clarify it. Could you provide an overview of how housing vouchers work and the impact they have on individuals and families in our community?
Sure. So I'll just preface this by saying I've been in housing for over 20 years. And so sometimes I use housing speak. So if I do that, just say, what do you mean by that? So the Housing Choice Voucher Program works by people apply for our waiting list. When they come to the top of the waiting list, we screen them to make sure that they qualify, and then they are issued a voucher. And they take that voucher and go out shopping for housing, looking for housing that they want to live in the private market. When they find the housing that they want to live in, they work with the landlord to fill out information about the amenities, the bedrooms, bathrooms, and how much the rent is. And then we look to make sure that the rent is comparable to the market. And we do an inspection of the housing to make sure that it's safe for people to live in. Once that's done, then the tenant signs a lease with the landlord And they begin paying 30% of their income as rent, and THA pays the rest to make that unit affordable for them to rent in the market. The program is really impactful. We serve about 5,000 households this way on an annual basis. And we have beyond the impact that we have on the individuals who are being assisted and the property owners, the program also has a pretty huge economic impact. We pay about $4.5 million in housing assistance payments per month.
I'm sorry, did you say 4.5 million a month?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a lot. And then I know this is a little bit off, so if you're not ready to answer this question, but I'm wondering about your guys' acquisitions and how that's working with your housing choice vouchers. Can you talk to that just a little bit? Or Nicholas is on the call too. And Nicholas is here. Nicholas, you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Hi, Nicholas Carr. I do intergovernmental affairs for Tacoma Housing Authority. I'm right across the hall from April.
So I'll speak this a little bit. So we have purchased 3 properties in Tacoma that we prioritize for our voucher holders. So we were finding really at the height of the rental market when it was super tight and people were having troubles finding housing, our voucher holders were having a hard time competing in the market. So we were using housing that we had purchased to make it a priority property for people. So if people wanted to live there, we would prioritize them to move into any vacancies. We had hoped that acquisition would be a pretty big arm of our business, but then the interest rates changed and it's very difficult now for us to purchase a property with those interest rates and keep the rents affordable. So we're looking at other strategies.
Yeah, that's actually really helpful though. Innovative, I would say. I know acquisitions become more popular, I think ever since COVID, but that's great because I know it can be really difficult to find a unit when you have a housing choice voucher. Okay, so let's move on to the next question, and thanks for my random question there. What are some of the biggest challenges or obstacles that you've faced in your role, and how have you addressed them?
I would say the biggest challenge has been this expectation that THA can be everything to everyone. There's a huge affordable housing crisis, and so there's just a lot of expectation and pressure to solve that crisis. And I wish that's something that we could do just with the snap of our fingers. But really, we're part of a larger ecosystem to try to solve this problem. So I would say the ways that we're trying to, I guess I'll talk a little bit more about one of the challenges. So one of the major challenges that we see in affordable housing is that there's one major source of funding for capital for building new affordable housing, and that's the low-income housing tax credit program. And that's a program that comes through the federal government, it goes to the state, and then there's kind of almost like allocations per county. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but in terms of the allocation, there's about enough tax credits to develop one affordable housing unit per year. And so that means all the housing developers are trying to coordinate to see when they're going to be ready to develop something. And then they go after those tax credits. But really, if you're looking at that funding source, it's one building per year. And that really confines how much affordable housing we can begin developing and ultimately deliver to the folks that we're trying to serve. So the way that we're trying to address this is by advocating for more sources of capital funding through all of the different legislative bodies, local, county, state, federal. Luckily, we have champions at all levels who understand the need for affordable housing and the need for capital. And as it relates to tax credits, our Senator Cantwell is one of the main folks driving for an increase in tax credits and more flexibility with how tax credits can be used. But really, it's sources of funding for capital that are a big challenge. So another way that we are trying to maneuver around this is not just focusing on development of new affordable housing, but also how can we leverage market rate housing and make it affordable. So we have done a few things. First, we've worked with private landlords to put memorandums of understanding in place where they will prioritize vacancies for voucher shoppers. So it's not that we're steering folks to units, but we're able to tell people that if you're interested in that apartment complex, they have said that they'll prioritize voucher holders there. So you know that you can go there and not be turned away. We've also used our subsidies to try to buy down rents in market rate properties, and that has been successful as well. So people don't have to apply through us, they can apply through that property and get an affordable rent that THA is helping to pay.
Fantastic. That's great about the housing choice vouchers. Another innovative approach to that. I wasn't aware, so thank you. So can you share any success stories or notable achievements of Tacoma Housing Authority that you are particularly proud of?
Yeah, I would say the first is the excellence of our team. THA has the best staff ever. We have folks that are super committed to our work, our customers, and making sure that folks are served well. So I feel so lucky to come to work every day and get to work with our THA team. They're amazing. The other notable achievement is that we've worked together to find a path to paying all of our staff a housing wage. Last July, we were able to increase the wages of our lowest paid workers to $32 an hour, which is how much a person needs to earn to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Tacoma. We thought that it was super important that if we were asking our staff to serve some of the most vulnerable people in our community, to solve their housing crisis and food insecurity crisis, that our staff weren't facing those same challenges. So this increase to our housing wage was really important and a really notable achievement that we accomplished with our staff, our unions, and our board. And then the third one I'll mention is building Housing Hilltop. That was a huge lift, and it took a village. This is a very expensive project. It's a $120 million project, and it took the biggest combination of funding sources to get that property built, and a huge commitment of THA resources from our reserves to get it built. And really, it took partnership with our internal staff, Bronner and Company as a financial consultant, Walsh is our developer, SMR is our architect, our funders, our investors. There were points where we weren't sure we were going to be able to put the money together to get that project built. And so when we got to the financial closing and put shovels in the ground, it was a huge achievement. And now seeing those buildings come to life and being able to walk through those buildings, it feels like a really notable achievement for us. And I just want to acknowledge Michael Mira, who's on the call. He started the vision for that project, the vision for developing that project in the Hilltop neighborhood, and the advocacy to bring the money in for it. And we're really excited that we're able to bring it to fruition.
Yeah, that is really exciting. And for those of you that are on the call and interested, tomorrow we're doing an affordable housing walking tour on Hilltop, where we will see Housing Hilltop, and I think we'll be able to check out one of the units for that project as well.
Two townhome, two of the base level units that are exterior entry available for people on that tour that we'll do a stop on for sure.
Fantastic. Yeah. And thank you, April and Nicholas, for partnering on the walking tour with us. I'm really excited to do it. And I think we've got about 60 people registered. So yeah, it'll be open for you guys. It's a free tour. And then we're doing just a mini kind of celebration afterwards at the Tupac, which is just across the street. So yeah, and I mean, really quickly, did you want to mention, I don't think you did, how many units are in Housing Hilltop? How many people are going to get served in housing there?
So it's 231 units it's about an equal split of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. So over 500 people will live there.
And I know we've had a challenge with having units that were, 2, 3 bedrooms. So that's really fantastic that you guys are making that possible, especially for the hilltop and the demographics that are here. The other thing I wanted to ask about the project is how long did it take to put this together? Took some years, right? And a lot of community input. I remember correctly. Well, and then COVID happened, right, too. So it's just
Yeah. So Nicholas or Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but we bought an old key bank site in the hilltop probably 7 years ago with the plan. We knew that the link was going to come through the hilltop, that it was going to change the economic investment, and buying that property was a way to curb against everything being eaten up by private market developers and there being no affordable housing. So it took a lot of foresight about investments in the community and how that could lead to displacement. And then, it took years of community engagement, of running a process called Design the Hill, hearing what the neighbors needed, what they wanted us to prioritize, and then trying to put together the funding package and line up for the tax credits. So I say almost a decade now that we're done.
yeah, that's crazy. And I'll just note too that I can actually see the development when I look out my back window from my house, and I love the colors. It was so funny because I was saying, wow, one of those buildings looks like a sunset. And then I'm putting together the walking tour and I was like, that's exactly what was thought of when that design was created. And I was like, oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. So thank you guys so much for doing that. And we're looking forward to seeing it on Wednesday and learning more about the project.
And those facades were designed by local artists. Hilltop
Yeah,
artists.
that's fantastic. Really in the community. That's great. Okay, so my next question, shifting gears here a little bit, what advice would you give to individuals or families navigating the housing system? Excuse me, especially during challenging times like our current housing crisis.
So when you gave me this question, it kind of gave me a pit in my stomach. This is a really hard question to answer. It's an even harder question to answer for our staff who work at the front desk, who are trying to help people every day. So I would say, if I were talking directly to a family, it's to remember that these systems are really difficult to navigate. It's not just them. That as you call for help, you may be told no. And if you have an opportunity, ask how you can get to a yes. I'll also say that there's no single source of looking for housing. There is coordinated entry. If you're currently homeless, you can go through that 211 system. But there are multiple places where people can be applying for housing. And so we've tried to put together those resources in a single source on our website, and I will drop those in the chat. We've also tried to put together a list of available resources for families, and so I'll drop those in the chat as well. There's a question about single people navigating housing. Let's say it's the same system. The rapid rehousing and coordinated entry system is for both singles and families. And when I talk about families, I'm talking about a household, regardless of household size. So there are units that are 1 bedroom, so presumably for single folks, and then some that are for families. Hopefully you'll find that the resources I drop in are applicable to different household sizes and needs. But the last thing I'll say is that what we find is that a big barrier for people actually moving into housing or getting housing is that they don't have their birth certificates or social security cards. Those are things that you definitely need if you're going to get subsidized housing. Those are requirements of our federal funding. So I would recommend that if people are looking for housing, that they start gathering those documents now so that they have them in hand when they are offered housing, because it will be a barrier to move in if they don't have them.
Thank you. Okay. So my last question that I have for you, it's actually we're ending a little bit earlier, so we could take questions from the audience after this. How can community members, organizations, and stakeholders support the work of Tacoma Housing Authority and contribute to positive change in our community?
So I think that everyone on this call could contribute to this question. So I'm just going to say my few thoughts on this. For community members, especially community members who are homeowners, welcome affordable housing in your neighborhoods. And as you're talking to people, push the conversation away from lack of parking and lost views to we all need to be part of the solution, and everybody needs safe, affordable housing. So that's something that you can do as a community member. Organizations, really look at what you're great at and what you might not be so great at, and try to work with other organizations so that you can fill each other's gaps instead of competing with each other. And that's true of us as well. I just think that we need to become more of an integrated system so it's easier for customers to navigate the housing systems. And for stakeholders, advocate for more funding and for housing and services. The folks who are in need of housing also sometimes are in need of services as they're stabilizing in housing. So advocating when you are voting, when you're talking to elected officials, and also as philanthropy is looking at where to invest, making sure that they understand that housing and services are really important for our community.
Thanks, April. That's very neatly wrapped up in a pretty bow. I would say for sure too about the services. I feel like that's one of our biggest challenges right now is just having enough operating dollars to support for those especially the extremely low income housing units that are being developed, because it's not just a one-time capital, you know, like here's money, you can develop it, but it's those ongoing services that people rely on for years, and hopefully the continuation of the project. So, and that's one thing that, you know, it's really hard to come by. So I know Nicholas and a lot of other partners on the call have also been doing a lot of advocacy at the state around having permanent sources of funding to support our affordable housing development and services. So thank you guys for that. Okay, that was all the questions that I had for April. Why don't I start taking questions from the chat? So pardon me as I try to navigate this. And then also if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand and I will call on you. One really
questions in the chat too, Amanda. Do you think I should go take those first?
Yeah, let's do that.
The first one was from Casey about when Yardi will be live. So Yardi is live for us. We made our first housing assistance payments out of the system last week. When you think about $4.5 million worth of payments, you want those things to be right. And that was a big deal. It took all hands on deck to make sure that those were going to be correct and that they were going to go out at one time. So it's live for staff, but I think the portals are still, we're advertising them, but not requiring that people use them. And a lot of our landlords have already signed up to use the portals. But we're not going to be doing the hard push to use the portals for, I think, a couple of months.
Can I ask you a question about that, April? Just as a tenant too, because I know, especially for low income tenants, like access to internet can be really difficult.
Yeah.
Do you expect to, you know, foresee challenges with tenants being able to use that program? And are you guys offering any kind of assistance to get them set up through that?
Yeah, so we will be helping people sign up in our lobbies and at our properties. We have iPads and computers on site. We also made sure that any of the systems that we have for people to navigate are mobile friendly because the majority of our customers are using their phones. So we're happy to help people get signed up, but also making sure that, you know, if people know how to navigate through their phones, that they're not desktop only type apps.
You, it looks like, so Teresa had a comment. Teresa, the comment that Teresa made was, she keeps hearing that developers say it's impossible to pencil out housing for people who are living at 0 to 30% AMI. And she says, thank you for the work that you're doing at THA. I wanted to ask a question too, because something that we didn't mention were project-based vouchers. Are you able to touch on like what is a project-based voucher and how does that work? That ties in really with what Teresa's kind of asking about too.
Yeah, so a project-based voucher is when we attach a voucher to a unit rather than to the tenant. So it's guaranteeing that the voucher will pay for the full rent if the tenant has 0 income. And if those vouchers go in before development, then the developer can borrow against those. So if, for example, if somebody has a funding source that says that they have to rent to folks at below 50% of area median income, and the rents need to be restricted to 50% of the market, then that's all they would, the developer would be borrowing at that reduced rent. And so it would be saying there's less income guaranteed to come into the property, therefore less debt that you can take on. But if the voucher is there paying the difference between that restricted rent and the market rate rent, then they can take on more debt to get the property built. So the project-based voucher is very valuable as a financing tool. It's also very valuable to get the rents down to 0 for a 0 income household.
How often are those available?
Not as often as we would like them to be. They come from our pool of vouchers. We really try to prioritize our vouchers for tenant-based vouchers so people can choose where they want to live. Because that's a really important part of equity. You know, people being able to choose which neighborhoods they want to live in, the schools that they want their children to be in. So we have committed project-based vouchers to the Mercy project at Aviva Crossing, so that we know that that will be a deeply affordable property. But I would say project-based vouchers, we are able to project-based VASH vouchers, so vouchers available for homeless veterans most frequently, because those are vouchers that are most frequently available to us from the federal government.
Thank you. It looks like Chanel had a question in the chat about property owners. So since we're talking about HCV participating owners, can you talk about concerns or needs of the owners to stay in the program? She's particularly interested in needs and constraints with maintaining properties and eventually planning for electrical upgrades where viable, or electrification upgrades.
Yeah. There's at least one voucher landlord on this call. So I'll take a stab at this, and then if voucher landlords want to weigh in, they can. I have found that there are fewer concerns from landlords about staying on the program since COVID, because it's guaranteed rent coming in. At least a portion of the rent is guaranteed, the THA portion. Landlords are able to assess the market and offer rent increases based on the market. And hopefully those market rate rents can cover their expenses, their operating expenses, but also fund their reserve accounts to do upgrades that they need to make. We run data pretty frequently about how frequently voucher units fail inspection, and it's a pretty low percentage. So we're out every year. Most of the time, the least is every 2 years, inspecting units. Customers can also call in if their unit is not being maintained in a habitable condition, and we'll go out and do a special inspection. And then we talk to the landlords that we need them to maintain the property, or we're going to have to withhold our rent. But we don't have a lot of problems with our landlords maintaining their properties. Mark, you have anything to add?
Well, just ask me. I have an opinion on everything. So, but yeah, the home inspectors are really great to work with because inevitably the home is prepared as best you possibly can, but not everything is caught. And sometimes most of the time it's just minor stuff, and they're willing to work with the occupant and the housing provider to get it remedied that day, or even sometimes while the inspector is there, because we might have a tech on the community or at the community to make that happen. So rarely does it turn into a failure of occupancy. As a matter of fact, I don't know that we've ever had a failure of occupancy because of the physical conditions. So
I just want to shout out to Mark. Mark's the president of the Affordable Housing Consortium. He's also on the Landlord Advisory Committee that THA helps to facilitate. So it's a group of property owners and property managers who advise us about how to better broker the relationships between the landlords and our customers.
you know, I'll just step in here again with that great segue, because April, you know, and Michael, as the leaders of Tacoma Housing Authority, or former leaders of Tacoma Housing Authority, see the value in having a strong, positive, collaborative relationship with housing providers in the community, because Tacoma Housing Authority is the largest housing provider in Tacoma, and majority of those houses are owned by housing providers. So why wouldn't it be a natural way to keep a healthy community and occupancy and housing? So, and I also want to acknowledge Tacoma Housing Authority too, because there are other agencies right here in our state and across the country that have visited or have worked with or alongside the Tacoma Housing Authority's Housing Provider Advisory Council to find out how they can implement that program. It is absolutely crucial. And if you look at who's on the call today, there's not a lot of housing providers. And not that there's a problem with that, and it's part of the solution. And Tacoma Housing Authority really is the leader to make a difference there, to include people, to create strong relationships, which create longer, quicker occupancies for families.
Thanks, Mark. April, can I just ask too, if somebody was interested in putting their property up to accept vouchers, what's the process for that?
You can contact our front desk. And I think that there's also a link on our website to do that.
Okay. And so if you share too, just so folks on the call, if you're interested in any of that, we're going to send out a copy of the recording, and then we'll also share the links to the resources that April had mentioned earlier about navigating the housing system. And then if you're a landlord and you wanted to put your property or prepare it to accept vouchers, we'll provide the link for that as well.
You need to ask Alexis that question.
Yeah.
I did just put some links into the chat.
Thank you. It looks like, I'm so sorry, I'm going through the chat here. I think that you had mentioned what the qualifications were for someone looking to receive a housing voucher. I think we touched on that, right? Did you get that, Anika? No, you didn't. Oh, okay. Can you talk really quickly about the qualifications?
Yeah, so they're listed on our website, but off the top of my head, you have to be below 80% of area median income. You have to have your one-time documentation, so proof of citizenship and identity. And we do run a very basic background check to make sure that you don't have any of the HUD excluded criteria, which are owing money to a public housing authority, being convicted of manufacturing methamphetamine in federally assisted housing, and being a lifetime registered sex offender.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll make sure you get the resource for that too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
and
Annika, thank you for the work that you do at Associated Ministries. What a great organization. And that home share program is really cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next question we have is from Michael Mira. April, has THA seen any notable effects from Tacoma's new tenant protection ordinance?
This is an interesting question, Michael. We know that the UW will be working on collecting real qualitative and quantitative data about this. Anecdotally, we're having a hard time distinguishing between the long-term effects of the pandemic and the new tenant protection ordinance. But what we are seeing is that there's quite a backlog in the court system, especially as it comes to hearing cases related to eviction for tenant behavior and rent collection. So cases that have gone through the courts where a writ has been issued, we're waiting 30 to 60 days to have that writ actually served because of the backlog with the sheriff's department. We also are worried that, similar to the pandemic, if tenants understand that they can't be evicted for non-payment of rent, that they won't pay rent. And that, I'm sure, sounds really weird coming from the housing authority who's helping people pay rent, but we need tenants to pay their portion of rent to maintain their tenancy with our private landlords, and we need tenants to pay their portion of rent for us to maintain our own properties. So we do have quite a backlog of uncollected rent, and we don't know how much of that is in effect of the tenant protection ordinance and how much of it is a change in economic status. But we know that all of our customers can report changes in income and have their rent reduced. And so we assume that people are doing that, and we still have a rent collection challenge, which will ultimately impact our ability to maintain those tenancies and maintain our properties.
Thank you. And I know, April, you just touched on it briefly, but the Affordable Housing Consortium, Spinnaker, Mark, who's on the call, THA, Tacoma News Tribune, UW Tacoma, Michael Mira, past executive director of THA. We've also got tenants, representatives, and the Tacoma Pro Bono. We are all convening to do a study on Tacoma's Landlord Fairness Code. So the study will be conducted by UW-T, but the partners around the table will help provide information to inform that study. And it's driven by the News Tribune. You know, they are impartial. They really just want the facts and the data. And the partners are really at the table to help provide that data so that UW-T can take that study on. I'm not sure what the timeline looks like yet. I want to say maybe it was a year. Nicholas, Mark, maybe you can help fill the gaps where I'm forgetting.
Yeah, I think the issue is that we probably won't know anything. We won't have enough data, frankly, for a year since the ordinance passed and went into effect before we actually can glean anything from that. So while we'll be collecting and talking about categorizing it, how it's used, and whether it's meaningful down the line, there just won't be enough, probably at the very least, at the end of this year, to start having UW to start actually figuring out what it means. And really, it'll be 2 years, and hopefully in time for when the city council has the opportunity to change or modify that ordinance, that there's enough information we've compiled and disseminated that there can be a good recommendation on, you know, tweak this, do that, keep this, don't do that. We have enough data that shows a trend at that point by the time that they have the ability to modify it. So that's the idea, but it's not, we won't really know much till the end of this year, frankly.
Thank you, Nicholas. Okay, let's steer it back here. Ben had a question. How can we encourage more landlords to open their properties for vouchers?
I think we missed Teresa's question
Oh, I'm sorry.
about how can these enormous rents build more equity with public and philanthropic funds? And homeownership is the main way for people to build wealth. Does that apply to municipalities as well? This is a question we're tackling internally, Teresa. We fully acknowledge that homeownership is the path to equity, wealth, generational wealth, that people of color have been locked out of those opportunities for decades, and there is a lot of reparation to be made in terms of generational wealth. And as the housing authority, we also recognize that the affordable housing crisis is a full continuum of meeting people who are exiting the streets with immediate shelter, rental housing, homeownership, and really how can we be effective in both housing people immediately and homeownership opportunities. So I don't have an answer right now. We do have some programs like our family self-sufficiency program where people work towards goals, including homeownership, and they're building escrow accounts that upon graduation they can cash out and use for down payments. We also have been really trying to put together a list of resources that our customers can access for first-time homebuyer programs and other home ownership programs that are being offered by the community. But we also recognize that many of the families that we serve may not be ready for home ownership. And it's because they don't have access to the ongoing income to maintain a property where rental housing would be maintained. And so I think that that's the place that we need to tackle, is how to provide lower income households with homeownership or equity building opportunities while making sure that their housing can be safely maintained. I don't think that that's a full answer to your question. That's the best I've got, though. Teresa?
Actually, my question was about why THA doesn't own more property itself, or other organizations owning more property. I totally am on board with you. We need places for people to rent inexpensively, but unless we actually own that property as a public, it will keep going up.
Yeah.
And if we own it as a public, we can eventually pay off the mortgages on these places and have long-term, permanently affordable housing. And I don't see much of that happening. So I'm wondering why.
Yeah, so we do own 1,600 housing units. By the end of the year, we'll own more than 1,800 housing units. And the reason why we don't have more, or that we aren't buying more, is because there's not enough public funds to just buy things outright. So we know that we would have to piece together public funds and private funds, and the interest rates are just at a point right now where we can't make a property pencil with the purchase price and the interest rates. And there's not enough public funds to keep a development pipeline going at the pace that our customers need. So really it's around advocacy for public funds and/or access to lower interest rate debt. And both of those things are things that we're advocating for.
Well, maybe we could just build one less nuclear weapon.
Right.
Thanks, Teresa. I'm sorry I missed you. Did you get your question answered? Perfect. Okay. Sorry about that. Thanks, April, for catching that. Okay, so I think then our next question is Ben's. How to encourage more landlords to open their properties for vouchers.
I can help out here.
Please, Mark.
So, I mean, that question is a question that I have with myself and with my clients in my industry, or our industry, right? Whether it's a for-fee management company like myself, or it's actually people who hold real estate and hire us to manage it for them. It's education, right? It really comes down to that. That's one of the reasons why THA has, the Housing Provider Advisory Council, is to find ways to get that out into the world. And the city of Tacoma has a really great program. Excuse me, I'll take that back. It has a program that has a registry for all houses that are rentals. And that is one way to do it, although it's very cumbersome. And groups like this, events like this, asking these questions and having you hear me say that we don't have a difference, a large difference between failed housing because of money, between voucher or private pay, like people that don't have any assistance. It's pretty this close to the same on the percentages. And the big missing is getting people into housing is great. We have this program that rapid rehousing, the assistance, the finding, the education, the cleanup. The gap that's missing that we have the biggest problem with is sustaining housing for families. Because once rapid housing gets people into housing, there's a term on how long they're going to be able to support them with education, employment, and also funding for the housing, but it has a sunset. And there's not a big enough program after that to help sustain the housing. Now, THA has their vouchers, which is great, but that's outside of the rapid rehousing, which is a lot of what's in Tacoma-Pierce County. And then what happens is we go into a failure of occupancy and the family is displaced and they find themselves back in the recycle of rapid rehousing again. So the rapid rehousing experiences a familiar face and name, wondering what happened. And then the housing provider is contacted by rapid rehousing to consider it again, or is being asked for a reference. So it's education, and it's also partnership, where we can build a bigger understanding of sustained housing, because it's half the cost. It really is half the cost to keep people in housing than to get them into housing. The staffing that it takes, the money that it takes, the resources that's depleted within the family itself to go through losing the housing and then trying to find again. So once we get that addressed and education, because look at we manage over 1,000 homes in the Tacoma-Pierce County area, and we still work a lot with rapid rehousing, with Tacoma Housing Authority and other assistance programs that are here today. It's education and also communication by both parties, the assistance program, the occupancy, and the housing provider.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so we have 3 more minutes. Heidi, I saw your question. I don't know if April, you can answer that really quickly and then we'll close out.
Yeah.
You comfortable with that?
Yeah, so
Question
our main priority over the next 2 years is going to be rehabilitation of some existing properties. So we have over 300 units, over 200 units for sure, that are over 15 years old and that are in need of some repairs to add to their useful life over a longer term. So our priority will be putting together financing packages to bring in capital funds to make those necessary upgrades, which we anticipate being about $20 million. So that's really our focus for our own development, you know, for lack of a better word, over the next 2 years. We do have at least one property that we hope to redevelop that is currently underutilized. It's 16 units on a site that could take 50 units. But we're not prioritizing it because it's the site could be better used, but the housing is in fairly good condition right now. So it's not urgent that we prioritize the use of funds for redeveloping that property. But if funding opportunities become available, we will jump at those opportunities. And then we have a site that we own, property off of 60th and McKinley. And we are working to partner with folks to develop on that site. And we hope to see intergenerational housing, family housing, unrestricted rental housing, and possibly home ownership on that site. But THA is not planning to self-develop there. We plan on using the value of the land to make development of housing feasible. Sorry, Amanda, that was too long of an answer.
No, you're totally fine. It was really helpful, actually. And I wanted to read the chat question because for people who watch the recording after, they won't know. So Heidi had asked if THA was currently looking at any new properties to develop over the next few years. So thank you for answering that, April. And then Mark, you have your hand raised, but you gotta make it snappy because we're out of time.
Yep. I'm gonna make this laser. Hey, remember, we're all here for the week-long event. And Amanda and her team and the board have worked hard to prepare this whole week. And thank you, April, for hosting this. Thursday evening is our big reception event. If you haven't already, your participation and presence there is going to make the difference. So clear your calendar Thursday evening. Get a hold of our website. You got all that because you got here. Get a hold of the link, get your ticket, come and be part of it in person to make a difference, to show our community that we are serious on our second annual Affordable Housing Week. We really need your support.
Thank you. And I'll put this link in the chat too for anybody who may be interested in attending. And if you need maybe some help with the ticket price, please let me know. We're happy to help folks that maybe can't afford the full ticket price. So with all of that, thank you, Mark. Thank you so much, April, for your time today. I know the community is really happy to hear from you. I think I get to take advantage of how easily I get to access you. So I'm sure everybody here is very grateful for your time. And then I just would encourage everybody on the call to stay engaged with Tacoma Housing Authority through the social media. They do a lot of community events. If you have questions, you can definitely call their front office, or we will provide those resources that April had provided the links to in a follow-up email probably within a couple of weeks. And then, like Mark said, please register for other events. We've got some really great ones lined up for the rest of the week. So thank you all for your time and enjoy the rest of your day, and happy Affordable Housing Week.
Thank you all.
Bye, you all.